of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. Pursuant to the House Order of September 23rd, 2020, the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. So that you are aware, the webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. To ensure an orderly meeting, I'd like to outline just a few rules. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available at this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. If you're on video conference, please click the microphone icon to unmute yourself. And please be sure to close your mic when you don't have the floor. A reminder that all comments by members should be addressed through the chair. Because of the delay due to votes in the House, we've asked the witnesses to be prepared to appear as one large panel. And I want to thank them for their accommodation in that regard. I would now like to welcome our witnesses, Grand Chief Serge Simon of the Mohawk Council of Kanesatake, and Chief Ralph Leon Jr. of the Sta'alis First Nation. From Homeward Trust Edmonton, Susan McGee, CEO, and Matthew Ward, Manager, Planning and Engagement. And from HUMA, Native Housing Society, Marcel Lawson-Swain, Chief Executive Officer. Grand Chief Simon, you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Welcome to the committee. You have the floor.
I'm sorry, Mr. Casey. Grand Chief Simon isn't here. I'm sorry.
Okay. So we're going to move to Ms. McGee. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. It's great to be invited back to witness for this committee and its important role. My name is Susan McGee, and I am the Chief Executive Officer of Homeward Trust Edmonton. We are the community-based organization using a system planning approach to end homelessness in Edmonton. We are the local entity reporting and supporting on the implementation of Reaching Home and have actively supported the evolution of our national housing strategy and homelessness strategies through a variety of ways. I am also the regional representative for Alberta on the board of the Canadian Housing and Renewal Association and have been a member of CHRA's Indigenous Caucus since its inception. I'm joined by Matthew Ward, the Manager of Planning and Engagement at Homeward Trust, and Matt's role includes supporting the Indigenous Advisory Council and our current consultation to inform the next phase of our pandemic response to Indigenous community members in Edmonton. Homeward Trust brings together funding from all orders of government to support service providers, Indigenous communities, and government partners in Edmonton to collectively plan, action, and monitor solutions to end homelessness. We have served as the local entity since 1999 and restructured in 2008, merging two other organizations under one comprehensive structure with a minimum of 4 of our 9 board members identifying as Indigenous, and with a separate Indigenous Advisory Council serving as the Indigenous Community Advisory Board. We're grateful for the opportunity to speak today about the Government of Canada's examination of urban, rural, and northern Indigenous housing solutions to end homelessness for Indigenous people. As is the case across Canada, Indigenous people are greatly overrepresented amongst those experiencing homelessness in Edmonton, with Indigenous people currently representing 58% of our by name list, while Indigenous people make up roughly 5% of our city's total population, while this is growing. Homeward Trust works in partnership with and directly funds 14 local Indigenous organizations using Reaching Home Indigenous funding, but also from our Reaching Home designated communities funding, our provincial and municipal resources as well. This is done to maximize the use of this funding while reducing the administrative work on frontline agencies to support the outcomes for multiple funders and to support the coordinated sector response. This committee has heard from Indigenous leaders and organizations on the critical importance of increased investment directly targeting the housing and support needs of Indigenous community members. There are multiple sources that document the reality that Indigenous people living in urban, rural, and northern communities face specific challenges in having their needs met where they are at through Indigenous-led efforts that are best positioned to understand and address local community needs. Homeward Trust supports the for Indigenous, by Indigenous approach before the committee, and that a specific national strategy that is Indigenous-led is required. Such a strategy should leverage the experience and knowledge of local organizations and leaders and support local priorities that reflect the specific needs of their communities, as well as the diversity of Indigenous culture across our country. The need for affordable housing has so outpaced existing resources for so long, and the projects that need real affordability requirements and provide sufficient supports to enable individuals and families the opportunity to improve their circumstances are so challenging to develop and deliver with current application requirements that we are in a deep hole. The overrepresentation of Indigenous people within those requiring housing is well known. With a specific national Indigenous housing strategy to drive outcomes, without one, we will perpetuate these circumstances for generations to come. There have been many studies that have come to the same conclusion. They may have varying amounts or where costs are incurred, but homelessness, we know, costs more than its solutions, and we know what those solutions are. We understand the importance of clear plans, and relying on evidence and targets drives much of our work at Homeward Trust. However, we also understand that perfection is the enemy of the good, and we strongly encourage members of the committee and all members of Parliament to prioritize action and move forward with the well-earned confidence in Indigenous organizations and leaders as partners in this effort. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and Matt and I will be available for questions.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. McGee. And next we're going to go to Chief Leon, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, thanking you for the invite here today. I didn't know what kind of meeting I was coming to. Brad just pretty much just voluntold me and where I was going to be and what I was going to be doing and what kind of choices I was going to help make. And I'm always honored to put my 2 cents in or my $100 in, whatever it may be, because sometimes you just have to put your hand up and tell me be quiet because I turn into a politician and start talking and talking and talking. If we're talking about housing, our community, we're in a rural setting. Our community is about up to an hour drive either way to a city setting. So to go out and grocery shop, you have to really plan just to even go grocery shopping and, fill up your gas tank, feed your family on the way out, and then go shop and then come back. And only about half of our membership live in our community. And we have a long waiting list for housing. But we've been pretty creative in our micro homes. The one bedroom home, the 2-bedroom homes, we've been building quite a bit of those so that our young people can utilize those homes, proving themselves or building their families, as before, or anybody was to get a house, it'll be the big families, because they'd they have the big family, so they'd get the house regardless. So that was a problem. And a lot of our homes that were built in the 80s from CMHC, Indian Affairs, the contractors would come in and, build a house and take as many shortcuts as they can to, to make a quick buck in our communities. And that became a problem to where, today, we're applying for funds for renovations. Why? Because we have mold in our attics, we have mold in our homes because of poor ventilation, or we're having to restore the outside because the slope of our homes and our yards isn't very well done. So we have to be pretty creative here in Stailis. We're an independent band, we're an independent tribe, which we're not in treaty, we're not in a treaty process, and we don't believe in the treaty process, but we believe in the reconciliation agreement that we will be working on hopefully someday soon, the pandemic allows us to. And we're going to put the invitation out to our MP, Brad Viss, who has come here already a couple times and, and viewed our community, which is a good thing, because you can't work with a community unless you know who you're working with. So we're going to build that relationship our way, set the table and invite them here. Then we'll talk about business in a good way. But we need to make it lots of mat in our language. Lots of mat means the interconnectedness that we all have together, because we all have interconnectedness one way or another, because we're from only one Mother Earth. Each and every one of us, we're from one mother. And that's what our elders tell us, and that's always our teaching. And I'm glad, and I look forward to Brad coming here and working with us. And the housing is really important to us. We need a place we call home. ACM. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Leon. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Lawson Swain, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm joining you today from Delta, British Columbia, on the traditional territory of the Tsawwassen First Nation. I am the CEO of Luma Native Housing Society, First Fund Society, Luma Medical Center Society, the Aboriginal Land Trust, and the Luma Development Management Limited. I am also co-chair of the Metro Vancouver Aboriginal Executive Council and a committee member of the National Indigenous Homes Innovation Initiative and a committee member of the National Indigenous Urban, Rural, and Remote Homelessness Caucus. I'm also a lawyer by profession. It is a pleasure to appear before this committee on behalf of Luma Group of Companies. I want to thank the committee for listening to Indigenous Canadians and hearing the concerns and fiscal challenges of the Indigenous housing and homelessness service providers from across the country. Luma began 40 years ago with a simple dream of providing affordable housing to Indigenous peoples. Since then, our society has morphed into a broad-based community organization that provides a wide range of services, which include social housing, affordable housing, modular housing, homelessness services, youth programming, the Aboriginal Patients Lodge, medical services, community voicemail, and project development services for social purpose real estate. We are also the community entity on behalf of the Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities in the GVRD and throughout other parts of the province of British Columbia, pursuant to the federal government's Reaching Home program. Our aspiration is to see a day when urban and rural and remote Indigenous peoples experience the same level of access to housing and services that are afforded to all other Canadians and the distinction-based nations, namely First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. To achieve this goal, it will take a political will and bold and courageous actions on the part of the government and Canadians alike. It should be noted that urban, rural, and remote Indigenous peoples are the have-nots in this country, and for the most part are landless and distinctionless as a peoples. We are experiencing gross and systemic violations of the right to housing. In Canada, approximately 80% of Indigenous peoples live in urban, rural, and remote communities. Although we comprise of approximately 4% of the total population, we are overrepresented in the homeless population across this country. The range of homelessness across Canada for Indigenous peoples is between 30 and 80%. The data made available through the National Homelessness Point in Time counts indicate that Indigenous peoples comprise of 30% of the homeless population across 61 Reaching Home communities. These figures are more than just numbers. They represent the members of our communities, our nations, and in many instances, our families. In urban, rural, and remote communities, we come from diverse backgrounds, Indigenous nations, and life experiences. Service providers such as Luma and the many others that form part of the National Indigenous Urban, Rural, and Remote Homelessness Caucus share a long-standing commitment to serving our communities in accordance with our cultural knowledge, practice, and teachings. I want to point out to this committee that the homelessness situation for urban, rural, and remote Indigenous peoples became more acute post-1983 when the federal government ended the social housing program under the National Housing Act. While we suffered significantly prior to this period, our homelessness conditions worsened to the point where we are now today. Since then, and for the past 27 years, Canada has continued to fund the distinction-based nations, while urban, rural, and remote communities have suffered with a patchwork of programs that have left our communities in desperation. Last year, we were one of many Indigenous agencies that authored a letter to the Prime Minister where we demanded that Canada recognize the right to adequately resourced national urban and rural Indigenous housing and homelessness strategy developed and implemented by the urban, rural, and remote housing and service providers. That Canada recognize urban, rural, and remote housing and service providers as expressions of Indigenous self-determination as recognized by the Federal Court of Appeal in the Musquatus case, and as per Article 4, 21, and 23 of UNDRIP, and that Canada create legislation mirroring the rights of accountability framework articulated in the National Housing Strategy Act, which recognizes culturally relevant housing as a human right for Indigenous people in urban, rural, and remote areas. I share the above presentation in the sincere hope that our housing and homelessness conditions are prioritized in the federal government's implementation of the National Housing Strategy as a matter of human rights and consistent with UNDRIP, so that one day urban, rural, and remote Indigenous peoples experience the same level of access to housing and services that are afforded to all the other Canadians and the distinction-based First Nations, or distinction-based nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawson-Swain. We're going to begin now with rounds of questions, starting with the Conservatives. Mr. Kent, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And if I could just begin by asking our clerk whether Grand Chief Simon has been able to connect yet. He's not. Fine, thank you. If I could start, and thanks to all of our witnesses for appearing, and thanks for your patience in waiting out our votes this afternoon in the House. If I could start with Ms. McGee, and I'm just wondering, given the needs for Indigenous affordable housing in the city of Edmonton, whether or not you have been in contact with the city of Edmonton for a share of the $17 million under the Major Cities Stream in the Rapid Housing Project.
Yes, we certainly have. We work very closely with the City of Edmonton and have submitted a number of projects already under RHI, certainly exceeding the original and block allotment for the City of Edmonton. And within that context, we have targets in all of our projects and anticipate specific projects to be Aboriginal specific, Indigenous specific, and as well, all of our agencies also are supported in supporting Indigenous community members with targets of exceeding 60%. So with all of that work, at the core of it is the desire to meet the housing needs of Indigenous community members.
Could you tell us what your current inventory is and how you see that, or how you would hope to see that expanded through the rapid housing initiative?
There's interestingly in Alberta we have kind of independent operators outside of our social housing portfolios, and we have a few hundred units within the community social housing historical allotment that had been funded back originally in the 70s through the then CMHC program. And then we have other organizations that have independently developed an additional approximately 100 units. Now, we are very focused in our work at Homer Trust on supportive housing and specifically ending homelessness. And so within our work, we are targeting 900 units of supportive housing in the next, within the next 5 years, of which, again, a minimum of 60% of that will serve Indigenous community members. There's certainly a much higher need for additional social housing and deep subsidy housing beyond that, which we fund and operate.
Now, unlike some of the on-reserve housing situations or more remote situations, am I correct in assuming these would not be single-family homes as much as multi-unit dwellings?
That's correct. We are primarily focused on, we do have some duplex and fourplex housing, but primarily we're focused on multi-unit housing.
Okay, thank you. If I could turn now to Mr. Lawson-Swain, and Mr. Lawson-Swain, the LUMA Native Housing Society has a long and clearly successful history in terms of the 500 existing units of housing that you now have. When you talk about continuing needs, how many additional units are you talking about? You're muted, sir.
Currently, we have about 600 units under development right now. But we have a huge need here in the GVRD. We have 6,000 applicants on our wait list. And we often say that it would take you 85 years to get housed at LUMA, which is extremely a long time. So we could, in order to accommodate the needs of our community over a period of 10 years, we'd have to build 600 units every year for the next 10 years just to meet our current wait list. And we need to keep in mind that every year those numbers are added to purely by the fact that Indigenous youth that are aging out of foster care, there's 700 Indigenous youth that age out of foster care every year here. And, of those kids, 50% will end up homeless and on the streets. So, generally to meet the needs, we would say that we would need almost 1,000 units a year for the next 10 years to meet our needs.
Well, and currently under construction, you said 600?
We have 600, yeah. We have 350 that are currently committed with financing and program funding from BC Housing, and another 300 or so that we currently bought sites for, and we're in the process of making application to government to have them funded.
And how have COVID restrictions and precautions impacted that work?
Amazingly, not very much. Our teams work extensively, and we've done quite well, even during the COVID situation.
And just a final question: you wouldn't fall, I don't believe, under the major city stream of rapid housing, but would you see any applications in the project stream, given that it does provide for Indigenous governing bodies?
Yes, we have made an application and currently waiting for CMHC to make their decision with respect to that application.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Turnbull, please, for 6 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the panelists for being here today. Really admire the work that your organizations are doing. I spent a little time last night researching both, and Ms. McGee, maybe I'll start with a few questions for you on Homeward Trust Edmonton. I was really impressed by your updated plan on your website and the dashboard and how you're measuring toward ending homelessness. I understand you're distributing funds through Reaching Home and funding, I think you said 14 Indigenous-led organizations, is that correct?
Currently, yes.
Yeah, okay, great. And do you think that Reaching Home, that program, is meeting the needs of urban, rural, and northern Indigenous people?
There's real strengths to the way that the program is delivered, and it is actually really important to underscore that. It is a program that focuses on community-led decision-making. It engages the community advisory board structure, which often we find it's difficult to have a really kind of systems and coordinated approach when there's a lack of coordination, and the Reaching Home program really drives that. We have seen increases in the available funding through Reaching Home that has been really critical. And more to our point in Edmonton, we are seeing increases for the first time in homelessness since the beginning of our work in the Housing First program, specifically in 2009. So we had an overall reduction. We're seeing that go up. So it's going to be difficult to maintain our pace of housing and continue to see that decrease with that circumstance, and that's going to require more resources. But there are really effective aspects of the program that I think need to be acknowledged.
Great. Are there any improvements that you want to mention that need to be made?
Well, I think we are all absolutely exhausted with this pandemic, and we are, it's very concerning and quite frankly fearful. We have numerous outbreaks in our projects right now. However, we've learned a few things, and some of the things that we've learned, I think, can be a bit of a silver lining in that we are rolling out resources much more quickly and effectively, and we're able to make decisions in a much more compressed time frame. So I'm really certainly hoping that that is a learning, and it's not just something that will go back to a previous approach pre-pandemic once we can put this behind us. And I think that that is something that is an area of improvement, is just a higher level of efficiency in the decisions that get made locally.
In terms of really truly undertaking this study and wanting to get the best possible outcome for urban, rural, and northern, Indigenous people and their housing needs, what do you hope to get out of, what advice do you have for us in terms of where, this study should land? And Mr. Lawson Swain, I'm going to ask you the same question after, because I'm sure you're going to have something significant to contribute to this as well. Ms. McGee, maybe I'll start with you.
Well, I tried to allude to it in my opening remarks, but I really do believe that we have some exceptional leadership and organizations that have been in kind of a hurry up and stand still, certainly prior to the National Housing Strategy, and currently with the expectation that there is going to be another specific Indigenous, urban, rural, and northern component to that. But it's really not happening fast enough. And I think that there's a bit of a preoccupation, quite frankly, and with respect to having a lot of precision on really big numbers in terms of need when our resources are so shy of what we actually need. So I think we need to move out of a planning space and into a really action-oriented space and just get those resources out the door and trust the organizations that exist to do that.
Thank you. Mr. Lawson Swain, do you want to add to that or build on it or just make some other suggestions?
I would go a step further. I just think that what we need to do at this point in time is create legislation for a national Indigenous housing, coalition or coalition, I guess, from across the country, and start with legislation and then select people from across the country to sit on that National Indigenous Housing Council. And also to come to a quick agreement on the number of or the amount of funds that are needed to put that into action. I think I agree with Ms. McGee. There's a lot of emphasis placed on, well, what number should we select? As far as the needs go and what budget to come up with. I mean, easily in my mind, we could look at $2.5 billion to $5 billion a year over the next 10 years. But in addition to this, amount of money for the capital side of things, we need to recognize that there was a program in place at one time called the Section 56-1 program under the National Housing Act that really was the gold star of social housing across the country for urban Indigenous housing providers. And it's that program, because that program provided resources for not only the capital funds, it also provided operating subsidies, which is the piece that's mandatory for urban Native housing societies to function as nonprofits. There's no revenue in this. We're trying to meet the deepest needs of people across the country and the hardest to house. So we can't be looking at market housing and expecting organizations to pay market rents so that we can pay for mortgages.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Suite, Madame Chabot, pour 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Merci à vous.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the witnesses. Sorry for the delay. On behalf of all my colleagues, I want to excuse the absence of Grand Chief Simon. We tried to reach him. He must have a good reason, so I'm sorry for that. And I'm sure he's sorry too. My first question is to Chief Leon. Thank you for your presence. If we asked you to be there, they must have good reasons, and your testimony is proof of that. I was troubled or I was questioning what you said. You need to increase the housing units, affordable units, and you said there were molds problems and renovation needs. You're on reserve. How do programs, the federal strategic programs, apply? And how can you solve these problems with the federal programs?
Chief Leon, that one was for you, I believe. Do you want to take yourself off mute there and go ahead?
Oui.
I thank you for the question, but I don't understand French, so I don't know what the question was.
Okay, Chief, on the bottom of your screen, you'll see a globe that says interpretation.
Yeah.
And if you press on that, that'll give you three options: English, French, and floor. If
Yes.
you press English, you will get simultaneous translation of everything Madame Chabot says.
Okay.
Okay. Madame Chabot, je peux recommencer.
Ms. Chabot, we can start over if you want. You can ask your question again. Now he has access to interpretation. Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you for your testimony on the reality of your community on reserve, as I understand. In light of the problems you find, the lack of affordable housing, and the state of these units, as you said, do you have access to dedicated funds for communities as part of the national strategy to give housing to the communities, and there's an indigenous stream? Is that a program from which you benefit and that allows to meet your needs or not?
The question. Like I said, our home, our community, the membership is at about 1,200 people registered here on reserve, and we have 198 homes here to house. So that creates a problem where more than half need to live off reserve to gain a home to live in. And like Larson and McGee said, a lot of our people from our communities end up in a situation where they have to go to them to get housed. And what we're trying to do here in Stehelas is create the micro homes, which only has a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom, where it's more affordable to get them started, because we utilize CMHC still to this day, and we also utilize ISK, Indian Affairs, and which we use the subsidy from ISK, and which still almost creates a problem of affordability. You know, the monies from Indian Affairs is just very, very minimal, which only pays for maybe a foundation and a septic field, and that's it. And you know, and to get the people home, they need a job, they need to prove themselves through their finance to gain home themselves, individual purchases. So we have many problems that just overlap each other, and it creates a big problem. And you know, us leadership at home, we do want them home, but just like Mr. Larson said, we need to build probably at least 100 homes a day or a year for them to all to be home. So thank you for your question.
Merci.
Thank you. My next question is to Ms. McGee. Hello. There was a report from your organization from 2017 saying there was progress over the last 10 years. But there's still a big gap between the needs and the accomplishments in terms of housing. You said you need a few $1 million, $230 million until 2022. What are the federal sources of funding that could help you, that will be allocated to support you in that effort?
Currently, we do administer the Reaching Home funding, and throughout the pandemic, there have been some allocations to really heightening our response, specifically during the pandemic. But one asterisk or caveat I would put on that report is at the time we were celebrating a 45% reduction in our homeless numbers in our community. We've had a very confident and robust Housing First program. Since the pandemic has started, we have been housing at a pace of about 120 to 140 people a month, but we've also had more inflow into homelessness than we've had housing, and so our numbers are now going up, and we are back up from 1,500 at the time to now almost 2,000 people on our by name list. So to speculate on the total number of funding based on that 230 million would take some additional work. But from a federal perspective, the Reaching Home dollars play a very critical role. They also, I think the work of various parts of this committee's work, as well as things we've learned in the pandemic, is the importance of other areas, such as, this is a public health crisis, and we are working really hard with different areas of government to bring to bear on additionally the Reaching Home dollars, other program dollars. But really, it's been through that Reaching Home priority setting and the National Housing Strategy that all of those bars need to be set. So I don't have an easy answer to say what other areas of government could complement or make this all work, but I do think that it all needs to come together through a coordinated effort.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Merci, Madame Chabot. Next, Ms. Gazan, please, for 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for being here today and being patient, waiting for us to be able to actually arrive. My first question is for Ms. McGee. So this summer, I introduced a motion to convert the CERB into a permanent guaranteed livable basic income as a step towards ensuring that every person living in Canada is able to live in dignity and with human rights. And the basic income I was proposing is meant to center those in society who need it most based on data. And right now it's clear that Indigenous people are some of the most unhoused people living in Canada. So in addition, the National Inquiry also called for a guaranteed livable basic income in Call to Justice 4.5 to ensure, again, a guaranteed livable basic income for all Canadians, including Indigenous peoples, to meet their social and economic needs. How do you believe a permanent guaranteed livable basic income could help ensure Indigenous peoples are able to access housing and have their right to housing met?
Homer Trust focuses a lot on data and a lot on numbers, and I will confess that a lot of our focus certainly is on that those in our community that wouldn't even be necessarily qualifying for the CERB at this point because it did require, pre-employment, et cetera. So having said that, I will share that one of our experiences in the pandemic really heightens we don't know what we don't know. And that is that inflow into homelessness, where so many people experiencing poverty are experiencing homelessness for the first time because of the circumstances that are directly related to poverty and a lack of income. So it is that need for an income and to preempt an experience that ultimately homelessness erodes so many other aspects of health and mental health for individuals. And so, just being able to prevent that. But I will also say that those are some of the areas where we are acutely aware that the pressures are far higher than we estimated in terms of the vulnerability of people that just because of a lack of income are so on the verge of an experience of homelessness.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think we know that we're seeing first-time homelessness at a higher rate right now as a result of the pandemic. Totally concerning. My next question is for Mr. Lawson. I appreciated your comments, or Mr. Swain, sorry. I appreciated your comments in the beginning, and we have heard from previous witnesses that in comparison to what is currently being offered by the federal government for housing, massive and sustainable investments are required to ensure Indigenous people's right to housing. And I appreciated particularly your comments noting systemic racism, something, if you look at a history of willful underfunding of First Nations, is really an example of systemic racism in real time. I'm wondering if you could expand a little bit more on that.
I have to get used to using the microphone. Tensei Buju. I want to say that that's a really tough question. It's not easy to answer that. I think what we've been calling for here locally in Vancouver is for government to begin the work of reconciliation by doing systemic barrier audits to see what policies and what laws exist that oppose discrimination or systemic discrimination for Indigenous peoples. And on the one hand, when government is doing reconciliation pieces, there are also we're finding locally here that often government departments are working towards places where they're taking urban Indigenous people and lumping them into an equity policy, and we find that somewhat disrespectful. With respect to the unique and distinct history of Indigenous peoples in this country, to find ourselves being assimilated into another process of equality and assimilating us through equity provisions. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I do think that we need to do more nationally in this country to assess all the rules and policies and laws that create this discrimination for our systemic barriers for our peoples, and that I don't believe has been done. Hopefully, with Bill C-15 and the new issues with respect to UNDRIP, we will find ways to weed through those policies and become more effective at the work that we're doing nationally.
Yes, thanks very much. I say that because if you look at all the COVID funding, even to date, that's been dispersed, we comprise 5% of the Canadian population, yet we've received less than 1% of the funding. Yeah. And so that systemic racism piece is certainly reality. And in saying that, this systemic or this underfunding of Indigenous communities, do you feel that you currently have sufficient resources to be able to guarantee the right to housing for each person that is accessing your services?
No, not at all. We're extremely underfunded in the work that we're doing. I want to comment on the point that you made with respect to allocation methodologies that have been utilized by government and the federal government and provincial government over the years. We rarely get, if we're 40% of the homeless population, we never get 40% of the funding. It's just like the example that you gave for the COVID funding. If we're only getting 1%, then we're 5% of the population. It seems a little bit unfair. I think in Canada, I think what we need to start looking at is whether or not what we can do to ameliorate the conditions. We need to go above and beyond what other Canadians are getting, and we need to get Indigenous communities up to par and be on the same level of suffering as all other populations. If the majority of the population have a 5% homeless population, we want to be brought down, from 35% to 5%. That's going to take additional funding to make that happen. And we need, we know and understand that additional funding can be made available, like in emergency situations, like we are all around the world dealing with COVID. This kind of the amount of support and funding that has been provided by the federal government hasn't been here since World War II. We need to recognize that we're in urgent situations in our urban Indigenous communities and remote communities across the country, and we need to do more to address that with funding to address it adequately.
Thank you
Mr.
so much.
Loveth-Wayne. Thank you, Ms. Gazan. Next, Mr. Viss, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And my questions are going to be towards Mr. Leon, who does live in Mission Matsqui Fraser Canyon. And the reason I invited you today to committee, Mr. Leon, is that like what you said there earlier in your testimony is that there's 1,200 homes, there's 1,200 people on reserve right now, but only 198 homes. That's an average of 6 people per home. What I do know about Chehalis First Nation is that first off, what I appreciate is that you're so proactive in reaching out to the broader community. You did that with the former MP, and you did that with me, and you just relationships matter to you, and that's why I brought you here today, because your words mean a lot and they need to be shared. One of the questions I have for you today is, do you believe that you have that Chehalis First Nation has sufficient human and financial resources to develop project proposals? And generally, how long does it take for ISK or CMHC to get back to you when you do apply for a project?
I think that ISK is a little behind. They have to look after every community in the province of BC, and we are one of the largest communities, and they just can't keep up to our needs. It's almost like they don't need to be in existence. Why? Because a lot of our funds that come from Ottawa go to Victoria, go to them, and then by the time it gets to us, the percentage goes down. And here in Chehalis, we lose a loved one, and if we need to have a funeral, we have to shut down our school. Why? Because we have nowhere else to go. We need new gymnasiums, and we've been, communicating with ISK and the former MP for years, and words need to turn into action, and that's why I reached out to you, Brad, because I hear your voice is loud like it needs to be for governance, and it was pretty disheartening when we wrote the Prime Minister letters, and the only letter we received was that he can't make time for us and he can't come to stay with us. And so we need, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I just want to get another question in, but I hear you. So you guys have a small but pretty dedicated administrative staff at Chehalis. How many hours on general, or how many days, weeks does it take to apply just to get a single house built?
Probably, our housing worker, housing director probably puts in many hours over and above the time that they get paid. Why? Because we can't put in the budget we can't pay them overtime because it's not in the budget. Union agent came here and said, you only have this much money and you can only bill this much and this time, and that's it.
What would you say, and this is a little radical for some, but what would you say if we just cut out all of the administrative people at ISK in Ottawa and we just gave you a direct transfer and included all of the salaries of those peoples that were dedicated to allotting you money, but we just gave you all that money and let you take care of it yourself, both from an operational and an administrative capacity. Do you think your people would get better outcomes if there were more direct transfers or long-term funding models?
I believe so. We're in a 10-year grant funding program with the federal government through the AFN, and I think we're ready to do that. We're educated enough to do that. We know how to count to 10. We know how to read English, so we're getting pretty good. So I think we're ready for that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you guys haven't you've received some specific financial designations as well, which would you want to speak to that quickly too, and why they should just give you more money and less through Ottawa?
Yeah, with through a 10-year grant funding program, we had to prove to the government that we can develop a financial law, that we can come up with policy and procedures and be accountable to our people, and also the AFN, the federal government. So we've proven ourselves already that we can be financially stable.
So
you,
you've
Chief
already
Leon,
demonstrated capacity, and
thank-
you can't. I'll just finish this comment very quickly. Thank
go
you,
ahead.
Jerry. You've demonstrated capacity, but you're still required time and time again to submit these long applications.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Viss.
you. Thank you, Chair.
Ms. Young, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses today. Some really good information that we're getting, and I wanted to kind of pick up on what Ms. McGee said a little earlier about we don't know what we don't know, and data collection. And there's been quite a movement towards Indigenous organizations conducting their own research to get the data and information that is ethically collected and managed and made available for use by Indigenous people. In your view, what role should Indigenous people and organizations play in collecting that data on Indigenous housing needs?
I think that's a really important principle that supports the need for Indigenous-led organizations doing the work, and data sovereignty is important. I think that there's a lot of reports and research that cite information about other people that they didn't participate in providing. And, there's organizations in Canada that have really been evolving and leading in that space, largely with the national emphasis on data and how important it is. But really that, from a principal perspective, is one of the things that comes to mind in terms of why it is so important that this work is Indigenous-led, and that data sovereignty is important. Good decision-making is informed by data. And when Indigenous organizations lead in that work, we check those boxes and we make sure that the ability to inform that work when it's Indigenous-led does not conflict with some of the issues that we run into when that's not the case.
So what steps should we take to make sure that Indigenous people are meaningfully involved in data collection?
There again, when it's Indigenous-led and shaped from the beginning, that is the most important thing. I think that there are steps organizations and partnering with Indigenous organizations should be complying with around ensuring that it either is and is led by, and so the entire kind of structure of when we're collecting data should be Indigenous informed. If it isn't, and I know that this work is a big work, and we're talking very specifically about those Indigenous-led initiatives, but there isn't anything that can happen when we're doing planning for addressing homelessness needs that doesn't somehow touch on Indigenous communities. So I think it's an important lens to apply to everything, but I think that certainly there's lots of partners that can help inform that work nationally.
I'm not sure who would be best to answer this. Ms. McGee, you might want to take it on. I'm talking about hidden homelessness, and certainly the youth and LGBTQ2 and two-spirited youth, and the problems around that, if you see that as a growing problem and is something that we need to tackle as well.
It's certainly a growing problem, and one that is important to really fully understand. There's some, Mr. Swain mentioned the aging out of care concerns that contribute to long-term experiences of homelessness. We participated and supported Native Counseling Services of Alberta in producing a video really specifically about hidden homelessness and Indigenous youth. And what was important about that project is that it was a conversation. There was an approach to discussing the issue in circle, and really the experiences and the very rich experiences of people, both in terms of their obstacles, but their opportunities as well. And that kind of lens, I think, can be shared with the committee and probably more broadly shared, where there's a lot of information we generate and maybe don't hit all the right audiences. But that is that all came about because it is such a significant concern in our community.
1 minute, Mr. Lawson Swain, could I ask you the same question about the hidden homelessness issue, and specifically with young people, and even more specifically with the LGBTQ two-spirited youth?
Sure. Thank you for the question. This is often something that we try to address nationally. Hidden homeless often or rarely counted, in the point in time counts. It's the hidden homeless generally affects the broader community, but in particular for women and children and youth aging out of foster care, this is a big issue. The other thing is that you kind of have to understand our family makeups. Our families won't turn people out of their homes if people come to them for a place to stay because they're homeless, and also the families themselves don't highlight the fact that they have additional people living in their housing units, because they're often living in social housing or affordable housing, which means that they're going to be evicted by their landlord for having too many people, based on occupancy standards. So they won't bring to light the fact that they have additional people living with them in their homes. I can't speak for the LGBTQ community. I'm not, an expert in dealing with the community that you're speaking of, but I do know that it's not a large amount of people, but there are a number of people who are in precarious positions here in Vancouver and throughout the country. Again, situations of violence and fleeing family violence, that kind of thing. And often the community is not, if people aren't telling others that they're from an LGBTQ community, they're not exposing themselves for that, because when they're in shelters or any other places, they're at risk of violence. So often they're just not, going to those spaces to be counted, in the first place. So it's a very difficult place to be for youth, women, and LGBTQ communities, and they're often not counted in the point in time counts.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson
Thank you
Swain.
very
Thank you,
much.
Ms. Young. Madame Chabot,
Ms. Chabot, 2.5 minutes. Mr. Chair, it's my turn? Yes, the floor is yours. You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much. Sorry. There's always a delay. A slight delay. Ms. McGee, I want to talk about data collection. A question was asked about that. What you said is extremely important. It's important that data is being collected by and for Indigenous peoples. This is very important. Now, regarding data collection, what kind of support do you need? Financial support and human resources support to do that, because it's important to do investigations so that you can find solutions. But from what you've told us, we see that there is a gap, a huge gap between the needs and the services that are there to support people. So what do you need to do this data collection so that it's done efficiently and that it allows you to meet the needs on the ground?
Thank you for the question. It isn't really just a resource question in the response to the context of this meeting. I think that we are learning so much, and with complete vulnerability and humility, we have a lot more to learn. And I would say that one of the things that we really need to do nationally is when we make something important nationally, and when programs and national plans and studies and get institutionalized in terms of expectations, we will respond. And there are experts in the field that we've learned from and are learning from. But I think that that need needs to be driven, and I don't mean to sound deflective at all. It is a matter, though, however, that there is scarcity in all of this work, and limited resources are just, just the reality of the work that happens in the homeless serving sector. So it needs to be something that's an expectation of our work that then we also can ensure, and we rely on leaders across Canada that are more progressive, perhaps, than other communities and other spaces. And the facilitation of that, I think, is very important. And some of that has been facilitated by the establishment of, really cross-jurisdictional and national dialogue around this. And I think that needs to be supported further. And it is absolutely an environment of just continuous learning, and we will get there with, I would be really at fault if I tried to put a number on a cost associated with something that is more about shifting how we do and who we are and how we be, as opposed to just, a task.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Merci, Madame Chabot. Ms. Gazan, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. My question actually is for Ms. McGee. So today is International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So I think it's important to raise Article 19 of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which recognizes, in quotes, the equal rights of all persons with disabilities to live in the community with choices equal to others. As well as Articles 21.2 and 22.1 of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which reads that Indigenous peoples have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including, and then it goes on, housing, and that, in quotes, particular attention be paid to persons with disabilities. Last month was Indigenous Disability Month, which partially seeks to highlight the fact that Indigenous people living in Canada experience rates of disabilities much higher than the general Canadian population. Can you speak about the importance of ensuring the rights of Indigenous peoples living with disabilities are upheld in housing and otherwise?
I think you have said it so well. I think these are really fundamental rights, and if they're not incorporated in all of our work, we are leaving the most vulnerable amongst the most vulnerable behind. And I also know that in the communities that we serve and those experiencing homelessness for a long period of time, disabilities aren't always the visible disabilities, and quite frankly, either the diagnosed disabilities. We do know that within the community that is homeless, many individuals did not have access in their life to appropriate assessments and timely assessments at times where, had they would have now been qualifying for a level of support that others have available to them, just because of their circumstances and that they were not really in a family environment network that enabled them to be appropriately diagnosed. And so it needs to go back further and into the way that we actually determine and assess and identify that disabilities exist, because we have really failed to do that for people who are now adults and experiencing homelessness for long periods of time.
Very brief question, if you wish, Ms. Gazan.
Thank you, Chair. So how do you think that this should inform future government strategies and funds related to this matter in the future going forward? Should it impact funding frameworks?
I can only express that currently there is an expectation around things like universal design, and that there's a part of our application process currently that does identify that. I think we have to find a better way of not having that be potentially an obstacle to, so I think there might be some opportunities to work at a community level to find really creative ways of meeting that need. It can become something that becomes like another part of an application that perhaps gets in the way of the strength of an application, because we don't have a deep enough understanding of how we can achieve that creatively. And I think organizations on the ground really have the capacity to do that and need to be supported.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Gazan. Back to the Conservatives. Ms. Falk, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And first off, I would like to thank all our witnesses for being patient with us, but also lending their time here to speak to our committee so we could glean some of your wisdom and experience. Thank you for that. My first question is for Ms. McGee. I know you mentioned that there's been an increase in homelessness in Edmonton, and I'm just wondering if there's reason for that, when you've noticed it started, or if there's any data for that.
Yeah, certainly, and it is directly related to the pandemic. We maintain a by name list. It's available on our website. We have public-facing Tableau worksheets that illustrate kind of over time how many individuals experience homelessness, and you can cross-tab that with various other indicators. But certainly within the context of the pandemic, we have seen a couple of things. Certainly one is housing stability has been compromised by individuals who may be co-housing or in precarious housing circumstances, not able to continue that because of the need for their cohorts to isolate or just it's been more tenuous. And then again, to the point earlier of just poverty and poverty being exacerbated by for many that don't qualify for various income sources being hit hard during the pandemic. So definitely connected to the pandemic. And I would say, again, exposing for us in regard to our system, just how we need to really reorient around prevention so that that does not become an ongoing experience.
Thank you. And I'm just wondering, I'm from Lloydminster, so I'm pretty close to where you're located. I'm just wondering how many people your organization would serve that would maybe come in from rural, remote communities into the urban center. I'm just interested to know if that's a trend. Are there a lot of people that are coming outside into finding themselves even in the city?
Yes, there certainly is. And I apologize, I don't have a number off of the top of my head. When we did open our major center at the early stages of the pandemic, we had numerous people coming to Edmonton for just really for services that were coming directly to the Expo facility for support. And we also have what, and I apologize if the term doesn't, it's kind of an economics term around churn, in that we have people who come into our community and leave the community and come back and forth because we are a northern center. And what fortunately we're able to do is, because of the multiple relationships we have and the way that the Housing First system is designed, is we can reconnect with people when they come back into the system. But we are definitely a major center that experiences a lot of people coming to the community looking for resources and not necessarily having the ability to connect with them quickly, particularly in this time where so many things are really difficult to navigate.
Absolutely. And I do know, just from my experience, the importance of wraparound services as well when it comes to housing. It's one thing to have a place to go. It's a whole other ball game if we can have services that help in that process, whether it's jobs, personal development, anything. And I just have one more question, and this can be for anybody really. I'm just wondering if we could get on record, what are the differences, if there are any differences, between homelessness in rural, remote, northern communities versus urban centers, and what some of those differences could be, and or difficulties or challenges there are between the two. This would be for anybody, please.
I'm sorry, nobody's jumping at it. It is a very difficult one to say that you have depth on from our particular vantage points as the roles we play around the table. And I know Matt is actually from a smaller community in Alberta. Matt, do you have any comments that you would want to add to that? I'm going to call you out because I haven't this whole meeting.
Maybe, oh, sorry, my lighting isn't great right now. I think part of what I would observe as an experience of somebody from a smaller community and now working in a more urban environment, I think the range of access to services is a huge driver of that churn. So the types of services that one might need to access versus what's available in their community when you live in Edmonton versus my community, Drift Pile Cree Nation, 1,200 members, very small in Northern Alberta. I think that's where you start to see the barriers in access and what happens to people when they don't have access to those things. Chief Leon might have more of a observation of the day-to-day in terms of access to housing on reserve, I think is a huge barrier. When you go into the city, I think some of those barriers turn into things around access to things like experiences of addiction and mental health, the shelter systems, those like larger cycles that people connect to in those places versus rural is where you'd see the larger difference.
Thank you, Mr. Ward. Next, we're going to go to Mr. Vaughn, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the presentations today. To Mr. Swain, how many different nations of people within your housing envelope, how many different distinct Indigenous nations do you serve?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Vaughn. I just want to break this down to two different types of populations that we deal with. First and foremost, for the local host First Nations, the MST Nations, the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, people who are pretty much urban reserves, very closely situated to Vancouver or within Vancouver, and 51% of their members live on reserve. So we have served 49% of their population over the last 40 years. We have touched upon a number of their needs, in their community for that long. We also serve throughout the province of British Columbia. Of the 200 plus First Nations that exist in BC, we have served 51% of their population or their nations as well through the work that we do. But more importantly, the work that we do, we have people from all over Canada coming to where we are situated. So of the 600 plus First Nations from all over Canada, we serve 359 or 360 of those different nations. So when we talk about urban, services and urban resourcing, we know for a fact that the First Nations communities aren't going to be funded so that they can, if we have 5 of their community members living in Vancouver, for example, they're not going to send and create an office in Vancouver to serve those 5 members. So, they're dependent on organizations like HUMA to meet the needs of their communities from all over Canada, because we serve such a huge population of different First Nations from right across the country.
Some within the AFN movement has said, instead of creating a fourth stream of funding for urban, that it simply should be the 3 NIOs that manage it. The complexity you just displayed shows why that would be short-sighted, because they don't actually have accountability to those members sometimes, but they also is no method of dividing up the dollars so that you don't take money away from reserve funding or treaty funding organizations.
Yeah, I agree with that. The situation of not having a fourth direction is quite really quite offensive to me. We have over the last 40 to 60 years built infrastructure in urban centers. We have thousands of board members across the country. We have thousands of volunteers. We have thousands of staff. We have an infrastructure that would take 50 to 100 years for First Nations to establish. They don't have the ability to serve, unfortunately, their members when they're situated here, across the country the way they are. So in our scenario, if my 3 kids are registered to Norway House First Nation, their chief is not going to come here and meet their education needs, their housing needs, their health needs. It's just not going to happen. They don't have the ability and the infrastructure to do that. And I'm thankful and supportive of the government's recent actions to support First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people as distinct people. We all support that. However, we also support the fact that we have 80% of the population lives in urban centers, and we're not meeting the current needs of those people in the current structure we have, and nor would we with the amount of monies that are being allocated to the 3 distinct nations.
And in terms of having another side of the table for the federal government, if we're going to transfer block funding, multi-year funding, which is the recommendations that you've put forward here, with Indigenous-led design and delivered housing programs, what steps have been taken to make sure that there is actually an organization on the other side of the table to hand block funding over to manage that funding and also to manage the dispersal of that funding to the different urban, rural, and remote settings and northern settings?
Well, currently under the Reaching Home program, we have an Indigenous caucus from across the country that represents the different caucus or the community entities from across the country. So in that scenario, there's a ready opportunity to provide block funding to that type of an agency to meet the needs on the Reaching Home side. And I want to say that there clearly is a distinction between housing programs and homelessness programs. Those who are providing housing don't necessarily deal with the issues of homelessness and the dire needs for homeless populations to be served. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week care, the hardest to house of the populations, the supportive housing services that they need on an ongoing basis. They're quite different than family housing projects across the country where you're providing merely a subsidy for someone to survive and function on a daily basis. So I support the fact that there should be a distinction between the two of those, a Reaching Home pot of resources that continue to go on a national basis to Indigenous organizations in urban, rural, and remote communities, and a pot of money that goes for a housing strategy for urban, rural, and remote Indigenous communities.
Would you see a single organization blending those two streams so there's a continuum, so they work together but not necessarily at the same time on the same issue? Would you see that as part of an unearned structure that would be functional?
Yes,
very quickly. Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mr. Schmale, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. Sorry about that. I was having trouble with the mute button. I want to talk, great conversation today, by the way. I'd like to build on what Chief Ralph Leon Jr. was talking about, if I could, and then I'll kind of swing back and forth because I got a lot of questions here. The one I'd like to build on is the comments that were made regarding the relationship with the federal government. From what he said, and if I interpreted it correctly, dealing with the current relationship between the federal government isn't working, the status quo isn't working, so we need a new relationship that is more, also focuses on the economic reconciliation as well. Did I understand what you're saying correctly?
I believe so, because when we try to do things in communication, takes time. Maybe there's changeover. Maybe there's elections coming up, and everybody has to go like this for a little while till election is over, and then we get lost in the system. We try to communicate with different ministers to have meetings with them, and it's just not happening. We have resolutions that come from the AFN, and they're just not being looked at. They're not being read. We just had an AFN meeting, or a BC AFN meeting with some of our ministers, and the only reply we got was, sorry, we didn't have time to look at your resolutions. And those resolutions are very important to us. They affect everybody on reserve, off reserve, those that are in the cities that are nearby communities. And a lot of our native housing here in the Fraser Valley, if I go to a native housing here nearby, I would never see any of my own people in there. I'd never see my neighboring communities people in there. It's all people from every other place, and no place for our own people to go. So if we had that block funding for housing and infrastructure, we could do it. I know Stales can do it.
I liked what you said too, and something I think has come out in different testimony in this committee and others, where the federal government has a block of money, then it goes to the province, and then it goes to another level, and eventually, as it works its way through the system, that amount you're getting is smaller, until it comes to your community, and you're basically looking at the bigger pie and saying, well, I should be getting that, not this.
Yeah. And holy man, you just hit it right on the button. And that's exactly the way it goes. That 3-4-legged prawn that the main funding is from the federal government, and it goes to the province, to Victoria, then it goes to the municipalities, the Indian Affairs, then Indian Affairs comes here and dictates on what we can build, how we can build it, when we can build it. Stalis, we're ready to do that, all of that on our own. I don't know if we're looked at any differently from those that are in treaty or non-treaty, but we're an independent band. We're a successful band, and I have full confidence that a lot of our neighbors can probably do the same. Even those that are in treaty can do the same. They can manage their own funds.
Now, what about something? And I'll wouldn't mind getting your comments as well, and then if I have time, I'll. Oh, 1 minute. Okay, I'll be quick. Okay, what about the idea of a First Nations Infrastructure Institute where communities can either do public-private partnership, they can manage their own money, kind of taking out the middleman, so to speak, being the different levels of government, where you're able to go to this Indigenous or First Nations, Inuit, Métis-led organization and say, this is our proposal. Let's go with it, because it's run by people that live in your community or nearby.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome suggestion. We're here when I give out a portfolio. If it's housing, then housing, you're in charge of all funds. You're in charge of all infrastructure, so on, so on, so on. So if we did that with the federal government and the MP of housing, if he was elected in, he was appointed to be the housing infrastructure MP, then he looks after that money, that dollars, that follows that MP, whoever it is. If it was done that way, then it comes straight to the communities that apply for that monies for housing infrastructure. And one thing I always say, we never get dollars for those that live off reserve.
And what about potential off-ramps to the Indian Act for the bands that want to get away from it? Would you support something like that if there was the ability to do so, to choose whether or not you wanted to remain or leave that?
Very quick answer, if you could, Chief. We're out of time.
Yeah, I fully support not utilizing the Indian Affairs. Just like I said before, they take majority of our funds. Then by the time it gets to us, our funds are, for me to build a new house, what I get from them is very, very little. $20,000. If I was to go to the nearby city, I would probably need $200,000. So there's no balance.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Schmale. Next, Mr. Long, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to our witnesses. Thanks for your presentations tonight. Very informative and interesting. I want to kind of follow up a little bit on Mr. Vaughn's line of questioning.
Pardon, Monsieur le Président, il n'y a pas de traduction.
Okay. Mr. Long, do you have the boom in the right spot there? Oh, yeah, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Does it work now, Madame Chabot?
Can you hear me okay now?
Vous êtes en Sardine.
Oui, excusez, j'étais en...
Yes, my mic was muted.
Très bien, merci.
Oh.
Yes, works well. Thank you.
Okay, I'm good to go?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I just want to follow up a little bit on process, and I'll just give you a quick example. I was MP first in 2015, and one of the first meetings I actually had was with a group that wanted to do some housing in my riding of St. John Ross. No, it wasn't an Indigenous group, but it was a group that wanted to do housing. So I was excited to have the meeting. I was excited to go back to Ottawa and advocate for housing. But then I found out very, very quickly that, housing was provincial, and, the feds had agreements with the provinces on housing. And it kind of led to one frustration after another. And then obviously, I know federally we came forth with the, the co-investment housing program and obviously the rapid housing program. But my question to you, Mr. Lawson, I read an article or saw something online about you, and the headline was Indigenous-led projects seek housing solutions. And there was a picture of you there with the steering committee. And, I understand what your objective is and what you want to do, but my question to you is, what can we do federally to make that happen? Like, we can deliver, dollars directly through a rapid housing initiative, or we can do housing agreements with a province. But in the end, what do you need to actually make it happen for you on the ground to actually go from announcements to housing being built?
Thank you for the question. That's a good one. From my perspective, I think what we need is, go back to maybe a little history in housing here when the Meech Lake Accord, was happening, and when the provinces and the feds were arguing about the division of powers, and the provinces wanted the authority over housing, and the feds devolved their national housing program and the dollars that went with that to each of the provinces. We ended up in that particular case, the shortchanged, communities. All of us did across the country. And what ended up happening was the provinces then who decided to take this delegation of or the transfer of housing into their communities, like BC, for example, did really good with the monies that they received. But in other provinces, it wasn't the case. So in some cases, Saskatchewan, as an example, I think you heard testimony from Robert Byers that indicated that the province doesn't really provide any housing. They're not interested in doing homelessness services. So there's a patchwork of programs across the country that cause, shortages of housing for us all right across the country. And if we had a national housing strategy for the Indigenous community, we could avoid part of that.
So I'm just going to jump in.
Yep.
A few witnesses in past testimony talked about, potentially an Indigenous CMHC style organization that could oversee that. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I mentioned it earlier, that we support the creation of a national Indigenous housing, coalition or council that would be responsible for delivering resources across the country. Should it be CMHC-like? I'm not so sure. There are good things about CMHC, and there's not so good things about CMHC. The good things that I recall, because I used to be a CMHC employee years and years ago, was the Section 56.1 program that I mentioned earlier that seemed to work really well across the country. In the current CMHC model, it's not working and functioning as quite as well as it used to be, because they lack the legislation or the regulations, or guidelines to actually have that happen. So if we had a national Indigenous housing council that had some authority and responsibility and had the resources and allowed the Indigenous community to decide what the priorities are, like we do in the Reaching Home program. We have community advisory boards that set priorities and set policies and set principles. Well, we need to do that on a national scale for Indigenous housing for us to address our needs.
Okay, thanks for that. Ms. McGee, again, thanks for your testimony. And I know you, I believe Homeward Trust had a goal of creating 900 units within 5 years, I think I read. And I also looked with interest at a proposal you had to build a 50-unit, I think, supportive housing complex in MacArthur Industrial. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that project built now, or where's that project?
It's one of the projects right now that is in front of the Rapid Housing Initiative review.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So my question to you is very similar, obviously, to Mr. Lawson's. Is, just from a process standpoint, if you could, if you were in government, if you had an opportunity to kind of sculpt or script how you would like to see it funds come, can you just kind of give me how you would like to see it flow through to you?
And can you do it briefly, Mr. We're into extra time here, if you could,
Yeah,
please.
I will be very, very quick. We need to be held accountable and given metrics around what we're expected to deliver. But this circular kind of expecting us to be able to make 15-year commitments on support dollars that nobody in Canada commits to, other than on a yearly basis, doesn't invest in the organization, and it doesn't invest in the system and the expectation that the system will continue to work and that we'll figure it out. It creates this very conditional feedback loop, which makes it very difficult to really move things forward. So I think there needs to be confidence in the local operators in the system, and some hold us accountable, but trying to predict the future, I think, is hard for all of us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Long. Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et demie, s'il vous plaît.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is to Lawson Swain. At the beginning of your testimony, if I understand well, I think it was a cry from the heart. You wanted same equity, equal benefits for your indigenous communities. And I think that's a legitimate right. What would be the solution so that this reality of yours, if you could give us advice tonight on how we could work with all the federal programs we have, how could we meet the need?
Thank you for the question. I'm just going to go to my earlier comments and maybe to the comments that Adam Vaughan made earlier. We are in desperate need of a fourth direction and for some national funding, and to be recognized as urban Indigenous peoples with the right to create our own governance, to provide resources to our communities in the manner that we see fit across this country. We have not had equitable access of resources and money to do that, and we need that rapidly.
And what would be the dialogue that we must have to come to a solution that you suggest? Because reality is often different in Indigenous communities.
Thank you for that. I agree. Definitely the realities for our communities are different right across the country. I think there's a significant synergy across the country for urban organizations, whether it be through the Metro Vancouver Aboriginal Executive Council, which participates in councils like that across the country. There are urban native housing providers across the country. There are those groups that are funded through Reaching Home. I think what we could be doing is using the Reaching Home as an example of what we can do to deliver resources in the ground and to have community make decisions what priorities are and how monies are to be spent. I think that model is there for us to look at, and we should be examining that rather quickly so that we can mimic that for a national Indigenous housing council to allocate resources across the country.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson Swain. Merci, Madame Chabot. Next, Ms. Gazan, please, for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question for Madame McGee. You spoke a lot about declining mental health. Certainly in the riding that I represent, Winnipeg Centre, as the pandemic persists, I see a rapid decline in mental health, increasing rates of homelessness, and with outbreaks in our shelters, our community is in dire need of housing, and certainly low barrier housing, but also more mental health support and wraparound services within these housing units. I wanted you to speak to the importance of having these kinds of wraparound supports, but also wraparound supports that are culturally relevant to the people that are needing housing. I say this because in Winnipeg, 70% of the shelterless community is Indigenous, yet you know, the services and the housing support is just continues to be lacking. If you could speak to that, thank you.
Certainly, really quickly, I made the reference to we don't know what we don't know in some contexts, but in others, I would have to say that we could not have more evidence to support the importance of certain types of both support, but environmentally, sleep hygiene, how people are supported and how they're housed and how they survive a day, how much that erodes their mental health and contributes to long-term challenges. I mean, there's such a wealth of evidence in support of the need for addressing those challenges and those barriers. And included in that, when it comes to cultural supports, I would layer, we talk about culturally informed supports, and that may mean different things to different people, but it also really, from a mental health lens, is also about safety. It's also about recognizing the trauma that community members have faced and what contributes to our own experience of safety can vary. And I think that that's where, when we talk about culture, we are talking about many aspects of what we may think about in terms of culture. We provide training and support for land-based cultural experiences, but also just more deeply and richly that idea of trauma and the impact of trauma and the importance of safety and how we create safety when we're supporting people being really tangible and directly related to mental health.
Thank you
Ms.
so
McGee. Thank you, Ms.
Oh,
Gazan.
thank you, Chair.
Next, we're going to go to Mr. Viss, please, for 5 minutes.
Sorry, just finding my mute button. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, just fine. Go ahead, Mr. Viss.
Chief Leon, if you were given more opportunities to do things like build micro homes, as you mentioned before, how many more people do you think would be coming back to the traditional territory of the Chehalis First Nation? And secondly, has the federal government been able to provide or do the regulations allow you to look for innovative housing solutions, or does that create more barriers for you?
I think it'll create more opportunity for our people to come home if we're able to do more micro homes. And like I said, majority of our people live off reserve, and that's only band members. And we have 300 community members that live here also. So we didn't utilize those numbers, and I think there's some barriers in the ways that we apply for funds.
You mentioned earlier the challenges that band members had in accessing housing off reserve. Generally, where do band members from Chehalis go when they're not living on your traditional territory? And what are some of the firsthand challenges that you've heard about?
Well, right now we know of a lot of our people being in Chilliwack, Abbotsford, and a lot of our people live down far as California, England, and they're just everywhere. And wherever a job is created, and a lot of them go there, or they're just there's no opportunity here, then they'll go elsewhere.
How has the high cost of housing in Chilliwack, Mission, and Abbotsford impacted the ability of your members to find adequate housing?
It's impacted them quite a bit. We have a few that are not a few, quite a bit that are actually homeless right now in Chilliwack, Abbotsford. Some of them seek my help, your help with the COVID funds, and that helped them out a little bit, but still, Chilliwack don't have a place for our people to be housed in, and for them to afford a home, out there is pretty slim.
Mm-hmm. What final advice would you have for me as your representative and members of this committee what can we really do to help people in rural settings such as yours make a difference in the lives of your band members, both on and off reserve?
I believe transportation is a high priority. You know, we're trying to get a health center here, as you know, we just doing the final paperwork for that. But for our people to work off reserve, it's pretty challenging. You know, to get to Agassiz or to Mission or to Abbotsford or Chilliwack, because the public transit don't come here.
No.
So that's one big barrier, right? For jobs, finances, all those things. So that's one thing that I'd ask for.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel sometimes that things are stacked against your people, even though they want to succeed and they want to have those jobs, but because they're living in substandard housing on the reserve, it impacts other aspects of their personal and professional life?
Yes, it does. A lot of them can't afford Wi-Fi or even a telephone, you know, and being stuck on SA or whatever it may be, and you know those barriers of transportation, try to get out. You know, you can tell when it's SA day, or you know they need to go to the food bank. They're all out in the highway hitchhiking, and you know our people have to stop and give them a ride, and that's a big barrier. And what I'd like for you to do is to come here again and communicate with my chief administrative officer, some of our council, and just hear them out.
Thank you, Chief Leon, and thank you, Mr. Viss. Next, Mr. Vaughn, please, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. To Susan McGee, just a quick question about provincial health systems and whether or not additional, when you talk about supportive housing, when you talk about housing people with high needs or high acuity, how have funds from the provincial level flowed in terms of harm reduction, in terms of psychiatric mental health support, in terms of addiction issues? Is the provincial core of that strong enough to support an Indigenous-led housing program?
We have some really good examples of projects that I think, quite frankly, are internationally recognized, including Ambrose, which I know you're familiar with, and at the same time to scale when we're talking about the dedicated resources in advance that would need to support the many projects that we're going to need to truly meet this need. There isn't currently a commitment to scale alongside the capital that we hope to roll out. So it's a real challenge. I have been impressed when we have the opportunity to bring in Alberta Health Services to our projects. They do see the population that we are serving as their clients once we can get them housed. And I think that is a really important part of how we frame and set up the project models that we're working on. But it's on a project by project basis, and it is something that continually needs to be shepherded because it isn't really, again, solidified within our program models. And so every program is new. And when it comes to harm reduction, that has been a challenge around, supporting and clarifying harm reduction, I think, for a relatively new audience, because some people hear harm reduction and they don't fully understand that it does still continue to support individuals in a recovery journey, and we're working on that.
And in terms of if the study produces the results we all want it to, and an Indigenous urban housing program is self-directed, self-standard, and is funded appropriately, your work with Indigenous people, would it still need to overlap in order to make sure there are no cracks for people to fall between?
Yeah, overlap. I think really integration, but integration amongst really aligned goals and strategies can be can really create huge possibilities. I think we do spend a lot of time trying to negotiate little micro arrangements, and I think the alignment and the integration approach needs to be a higher level expectation. But they absolutely need to work together at a very minimum. And when we demonstrate the successes that I know that many of the really, not just in our community but across Canada, there has been really exceptional work done, and we need to share that and build confidence that we can do that and more.
And to Mr. Swain, in terms of the vision that you enunciated, one of the challenges in getting this done is managing the development dollars so that they become self-fulfilling. Would you see a role for financing not just supportive housing and deeply affordable housing, but would Marcel, would you see a role for supporting just housing that I mean, there's significant numbers of Indigenous people who are affluent and make a living and do good work in the community. Would you see a role for building also Indigenous-led market housing, Indigenous-led housing developments to allow people who succeed to also live within the community?
Absolutely. We're currently at this point in time building a project in Vancouver that is exactly that. You know, we're using the private market for financing, and we're using CMHC to create housing options from shelter all the way up to home ownership in one complex. So, you know, it's important for us to recognize that when we build housing projects, we build communities. We're not just building one-off units. So, you know, for many of the people that are out there buying and can afford to buy market or affordable market housing units, they also want to be part of our community.
In fact, their investment could roll back into the provision of other housing for people without needs.
Absolutely. And it's a way then for those who are more affluent to have an opportunity to support with their revenues that they're producing on their rents or their mortgage to help support the overall building and structure so that we can support those with lesser income and lesser needs.
30 seconds. So one last question. There is a requirement around only financing residential components within CMHC programs. They don't, for example, community health, ceremony space, study space, what have you. An Indigenous-led program, would you see a need for greater flexibility for communal space as part of housing programs to deal with some of the non-traditional in terms of mainstream programs, but non-traditional requirements to support people through their housing?
Absolutely. We have a good example of that in Vancouver and one of our projects called the Vancouver Aboriginal Children's Village. And that project, we built a cultural space in the main floor. We built offices that support the tenants and the occupants that are in the building for support services for the upstairs. And they should be part and parcel, you know, of one another. In BC, how the provincial government looks at that is that the commercial piece of the building cannot be more than 33% of the overall building structure, and but of course we have to find the financing to support the commercial part of that, and that often makes it very difficult for us to complete these projects. We used our own equity, by the way, Adam. We used our own equity that we've acquired throughout the years to create the necessary funding to fund that social or that the commercial piece of the building as we move forward. But that generally is not provided by CMHC or the provinces.
But enabling legislation would have to give you that flexibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you very much, Mr. Vaughan. Thank you, Mr. Lawson Swain. We're going to go back to the Conservatives now. Mr. Kent, please, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you very much, Chair. And again, it has been a very interesting and informative session tonight. We've been talking about the fact that big dollar ambition, big dollar programs that face the shrinkage of bureaucracy and other levels of government, and sometimes very small or greatly diminished outcomes. We know that the Rapid Housing Initiative by itself, $1 billion to be dispersed in ideally in 6 months, with 3,000 units built within a year, again, with part of that going to Indigenous housing in urban and rural situations. If that were to be rolled out on a continuous twice a year, $2 billion, 3,000 units, 6,000 units over 10 years, it would still fall far short of the Indigenous housing objective of 73,000 units and $25 billion investment. So I think coming back to you, Mr. Lawson Swain, and your background with CMHC, would you rather see, with regards to Indigenous housing and perhaps $25 billion upfront commitment from the federal government is an unrealistic expectation, but would you like to see that $25 billion delivered again to that if not a CMHC-like organization, but to an Indigenous-led national organization which would itself disperse those $25 billion?
Well, the short answer is yes. We we definitely would enjoy that opportunity. But I think that you know, we have a good example of what can happen. You know, the Indigenous housing or the Indigenous Homes Innovation Initiative that was created by the Liberal government by one of your ministers. It was an example of an opportunity for First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and the urban community to come together and work together. And we showed and demonstrated that we had the capacity and the ability to deliver money. It's that kind of creativity and it's that kind of a confidence that we have to have in our Indigenous communities so that we can deliver those dollars to ourselves and do it not only more rapidly but better. I can give you an example on the Reaching Home side of the funding that we allocate, because we allocate funding for 26 different municipalities here in the GVRD for both Native and non-Native. And we have two different cabs. We have a non-Indigenous cab and an Indigenous cab. The Indigenous cab delivers their money in record time all the time, and they set their own priorities and have it out the door as quick as possible. On the non-Indigenous side, it takes very long for them to come to conclusions, to make decisions, because they're not acting as a unified voice, as a community, and that's something that we do.
Okay, and in the brief time left, Ms. McGee, a question, and recognizing the difference between aspiration of new units being built, but your no wrong door approach is an interesting one in terms of ensuring the three levels, by the names list, by the coordinated list, by the matched list, that you identify the greatest need and equitable distribution of what's available. Could you just explain that a little bit?
Certainly, you know, all of the orders of government and our partners, and within orders of government, there's different contracts we administer, have very, you know, complementary but unique outcomes expected, timelines, when money needs to be spent, qualifications around it. And in order to really maximize that for our community, that's the role we play in the middle, like everything coming in, and then prioritization and making sure that we most efficiently put all of the resources and recognize too, and being able to do that, we can balance the fact that some things do get held up, some things happen faster than planned, and we're able to do that. And that's our approach as the entity in our community. It's not that every community certainly needs to respond in the same way, but it certainly served us well in that we've never slipped money as a community. And we've been able to leverage considerable buy-in, not just in terms of real money coming through the organization, but influence in the way that we're able to work with others on this rather complex issue.
And not just the provincial government, but the municipal government in the case of a large city like Edmonton.
That's correct. That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Mr. Kent. Thank you, Ms. McGee. Next, Mr. Turnbull, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks. It's nice to have another round because I did have a few more questions. Mr. Lawson-Swain, I know you just mentioned in the previous remarks about Impact Canada and the Indigenous Homes Innovation Initiative, and I think you might be on the steering committee for that, which is great. So I just wondered, you know, my understanding is it was 24 innovators that were selected from a very large number of applicants. Can you tell us a little bit about that work and how it might impact the way forward?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Well, I think it's important to recognize that you know, when we were all coming together across the country, you know, as different regions being represented, we had to clear the room from politics, and we had to recognize that we had a specific goal in mind, and that was to get housing dollars out, or innovation dollars out, to as many innovators as we could across the country. And from our perspective, we were looking at this as a status blind approach. It didn't matter to us if we were Indigenous, First Nations, Indigenous, Métis, or Inuit, or urban. Although we did recognize the importance that each of us played in that room. And we quickly came to a consensus model in the room before we started any work that we did. And we utilized elders and traditional teachings to get us to that point. once we got there and once we got over the hurdles of doing away with the politics of how we're going to allocate funding, the rest of the process was fairly simple. We acted in good faith with one another. We used our traditional beliefs. We acknowledged one another, and we selected leaders amongst that council. So I say that that's a very good model to look at. It's an opportunity to assess something different. That, in addition to the model that we currently use through the Reaching Home program for community advisory boards to have input and say, I think are two really good models to look at. And also, again, coming back to this Section 56(1) of the National Housing Act and looking, that piece of legislation still exists. It's never been repealed. It's something that we could utilize to help create this process moving forward.
Great. And just building on that, something else that I wondered, I noticed multiple references in different places in documents I've been reading about Indigenous-led businesses, and some of them being community-based or social enterprises. And I wondered if innovation in the housing space might include benefits for Indigenous communities beyond just the creation of the housing, but design, management, construction, the construction projects. There's many different aspects of building housing that could benefit the economics and of Indigenous people. Would you agree with that? And do you see those opportunities? Could you outline any of those for me?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the question. That's a really good one. I just want to go back to my initial opening comments where I said that LUMA began 40 years ago as an urban native nonprofit housing society. We did that under the Section 56(1) of the National Housing Act. And at that point in time, we quickly realized that we needed to have far more greater resources than what we were given by CMHC to do the work that we were doing, whether it was wraparound services or economic benefit. We all talk about economic reconciliation as part of the work that we're currently doing. And then I named off, when I first started, the numbers of companies that I represent. Well, all of those companies, by the way, are owned by LUMA Native Housing Society. And the one that we take pride in recently is the LUMA Development Management Company, where we provide development services to the broader Indigenous community for social purpose real estate. And currently we're in the process of building almost $500 million worth of social purpose real estate throughout the province of British Columbia. And we've only been in existence for 3 or 4 short years.
And what is social purpose real estate, if you don't mind defining that for the committee?
Well, generally just any project that has social benefit or social purpose. So it could be social housing, affordable housing. It could be an office building, but the intent and the purpose of that building is to provide social services. So anything with a social benefit for the broader community is what we propose and what we work on.
Thank you. And Ms. McGee, do you also have a social enterprise operating? I think it's a furniture bank. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Find. It's separately branded, separately operated, and provides furniture at no cost to community members that are experiencing homelessness, getting into housing, and allows them to shop for the furniture that they're getting that is donated.
Thank you, Ms. McGee, and thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Suite, Madame Chabot, pour 2 minutes et demie.
You have 2.5 minutes. Thank you very much. My question is for all the witnesses. We've spoken a lot about different realities when it comes to housing, of course, but are there specific realities that have to do with seniors for housing, for homelessness, for different difficulties?
Chief Leon, that's a really good question. Our matriarchs and patriarchs here in Stateless have farly outliving their Sea Island homes, their CMHC homes that were built in the 60s and 70s, and it's just not working. The system now with ISK, Indian Affairs, we need to revisit on the reno monies, the RAP monies, all those kinds of programs that happen. So I believe it's not working. We need the block funding just sent to communities.
If that question was to all, if I could only add one really quick response, which is that in this environment, particularly with homelessness, there's two things. The actual experience of a person who's had a long life of homelessness really is an analogy to a senior at like 45, 50. So when we talk about seniors in our work, it varies. The other thing is that in planning for housing and these supports, we often have have-nots amongst the have-nots. And we really need to be intentional around prioritizing our resources, because we can, at an unfortunate and once we get to like community level decision making, we put the needs of seniors against the needs of, in some cases, individuals with significant mental health issues and a long life experience of addiction. And we don't want to set up systems where those populations that both very much warrant support, and I would never oppose investment in seniors housing, but we really need to avoid putting those needs up against each other.
Thank you, Ms. McGee. Merci, Madame Chabot. Ms. Gazan, you get the last word, 2.5
Wow.
minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I like getting the last word. My last question is for Mr. Ward. My first teaching job, one of my first teaching jobs was as an administrator for an adult ed program, and on a First Nation. And I had to write so many proposals for little chunks of money. And the little chunks of money, the amount of human resource hours I had to spend to get $5,000, I would have to, for example, write four follow-up reports. So this is my question for you. How does proposal-based funding negatively impact the ability of Indigenous organizations or institutions, even like your to address housing and homelessness in a meaningful way that is both long-term and sustainable? I say that because I know particularly in Indigenous communities, it's year-to-year funding, so it's hard to develop long-term housing plans when you don't know what's going to happen year to year. So I'll let you to respond to that.
Sure. I'll be short because I think the answer is pretty clear. It's a huge barrier. I think it's part of the value add, and like as Susan had mentioned in the opening notes for Homeward Trust, there, like a lot of these organizations that are really relied on to deliver these services have demonstrated that they can do it. So the need to annually revisit their ability to do that pulls away from their ability to focus on the work that needs to happen. So I think I would just keep it short and leave it there.
And just very quickly, I know a lot of housing stock on reserve. Even when we have houses built, we often don't get money to fix our existing housing stock. So we're constantly in a crisis. We get a new house, but we have one house that isn't usable. What is needed to address this? I know it's a huge issue in regards to funding and sustainable funding, so we can develop long-term plans in our nations.
I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that question. While I have experience of on reserve housing in my personal experience, professionally, I work in the context of an urban environment and proposal writing. That might be a better question for Chief Leon Jr.
Sure.
Very quickly, if you can, Chief. This is you actually get the last word.
Thank you for the last word, but I think it's a high importance for us. We have a mental health team here that tries to look after a lot of those issues. We have a Latsamat group here that we also work with, where we can focus on those with any issues. We try to get on them if it's from the education department, housing department, children and family. We try to work it all together where it all works in and works for the individual or the family. And that's a good question. And,
thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gazan, and thank you to all of the witnesses, one for hanging around and waiting for us and then being so patient and so comprehensive with your answers this evening. We very much appreciate it. It will greatly aid the work that we're doing here. And colleagues, we don't do this often enough, but the support team from the House of Commons, the clerk, the analysts, the translators, the people in the room, have also put in some extra time to allow us to have such an excellent meeting. So as I say, we don't say it often enough to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, I think we're ready to adjourn. Is there anything else that anyone needs to raise? Seeing none.
Can I just add, sorry, I just wanted to add one comment to Ms. Shabbat or Madam Shabbat's comment about seniors. I think it's really important to recognize that in dealing with seniors, I can tell you from my own experience with my mother-in-law, she was in residential school, and she, because she's not in a special seniors program for Indigenous people, she finds herself in a place where she feels like she's back at residential school again. So she starts her life out that way, and she's going to end her life that way. And I think that Canada needs to do more for seniors and Indigenous people in that regard. And we need some specific Indigenous seniors programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lawson-Swain. I think a sobering and thoughtful note to end on. Thank you, colleagues. We're adjourned. We'll see you next week.